In the heart of medieval England, a group of religious men known as friars emerged as unexpected healers. While the universities of Oxford and Cambridge were churning out highly educated physicians, the friars, often seen as humble and devout, began to delve deeply into the world of medicine. Their approach was different, sometimes shocking, and often dismissed by the academic elite. Yet their impact on the medical practices of the time was profound. This chapter explores the unique medical culture of the friars, their methods, and their influence on the people they served. The rise of universities in the 13th and 14th centuries marked a significant shift in medical education. Oxford and Cambridge, following the examples of Paris and Montpellier, established faculties of medicine where students, after completing their arts degrees, could study the works of ancient Greek and Islamic scholars. These universities produced a new breed of physicians who claimed to practice medicine on a rational basis, armed with knowledge from authoritative texts and rigorous training. However, the friars, who were part of the mendicant orders like the Franciscans and Dominicans, took a different path. They were not meant to study medicine at universities, and their approach was often more practical and accessible. Friars like Henry Daniel and Roger Bacon, for example, rejected the pompous and often incomprehensible language of university-trained physicians. Daniel, in his work, Liber Juridicarum, defined complex medical terms in plain English, making them understandable to the laypeople. He described the rectum, for instance, as the last gut in the body, tied to the tail end, which some people call the ars therm or ars pub. Roger Bacon, a Franciscan friar, was particularly vocal in his criticism of university medicine. He called the lifestyle and language of modern physicians pompous, chatty, and mistaken. Bacon believed that true healing required a deeper understanding of the natural world, including the study of alchemy, experimental science, and astrology. These sciences, he argued, were essential for prolonging human life and countering sickness. Despite the official ban on friars studying medicine at universities, many friars found ways to incorporate medical knowledge into their lives and writings. The friars' interest in medicine was not just theoretical. They often practiced healing in their communities. They were known to visit the sick, offer medical advice, and even perform simple surgeries. Their approach was shaped by a blend of religious piety and practical knowledge, making them accessible to a wide range of people, from the poor to the elite. The friars' medical texts, such as Henry Daniel's Liber Juridicarum and John of Burgundy's Practica Physicialia, reflect their unique perspective. These works were written in the vernacular, making them more accessible to the general public. Daniel, for instance, wrote his texts in the style of a friar preacher, using sermons and plain language to explain complex medical concepts. This approach was in stark contrast to the Latin texts of university-trained physicians, which were often filled with technical jargon and accessible only to the educated elite. The friars' medical culture was also influenced by their broader intellectual environment. They were not isolated from the scientific and medical developments of their time. For example, Taddeo Alderotti, a famous professor of medicine in Bologna, left his medical texts to the Franciscans, indicating a mutual respect and exchange of knowledge between the university and the friars. Similarly, the mendicant houses increasingly employed university-trained practitioners to care for their sick, showing a practical integration of different medical traditions. The friars' interest in alchemy, experimental science, and astrology was particularly noteworthy. Alchemy, for Bacon, was not just about turning base metals into gold. It was a science that could extend human life and purify medicines. Experimental science, or the value of observation and experience, was crucial for uncovering new truths and developing new cures. Astrology, with its focus on the influence of celestial bodies on human health, provided a holistic approach to medicine that resonated with the friars' spiritual and practical concerns. In addition to these scientific interests, the friars also showed a surprising enthusiasm for women's medicine and human procreation. This focus was likely driven by their role in the lay household, where they often provided medical care to women and families. Their texts on these subjects were written in a way that was accessible and practical, reflecting their commitment to serving the needs of the community. The distinct medical culture of the friars in medieval England was a blend of practical knowledge, religious devotion, and scientific curiosity. Their approach to medicine, while different from the university-trained physicians, was no less significant. Through their writings and practices, the friars left a lasting legacy in the medical history of England, offering a glimpse into a world where healing was as much a matter of the heart as it was of the mind. In the world of alchemy, Roger Bacon was a towering figure whose ideas blended philosophy, religion, and science in a way that profoundly influenced medieval thought, especially in England. Bacon's work was deeply rooted in the writings of Aristotle, but he also infused his theories with a strong Christian perspective, particularly the idea of the fall of man and the redemptive power of Christ's sacrifice. For Bacon, the quest for incorruptibility was not just a scientific pursuit, but a spiritual one, aimed at restoring the perfect balance lost after the fall. Bacon believed that the key to achieving this incorruptibility lay in the concept of a corpus equal, a body of equal complexion where the elements and humors were in perfect balance. This balance was crucial because it meant the properties of the elements canceled each other out, making the body stable and eternal. There were 3 ways to achieve this perfect balance. The first was through the use of gold, which Bacon considered the only natural substance with an equal complexion. However, this had to be alchemical gold, not the kind found in mines. The second way was through the resurrection body, promised to the saved after the Last Judgment, which would have an equal quantity of elements. The third and most accessible method was through speculative alchemy, where the elements of substances were separated and recombined to achieve equilibrium. Bacon's approach to achieving the corpus equal was both practical and mystical. He believed that by using optical instruments, such as a burning mirror, to concentrate the light rays from beneficial celestial bodies on the corpus equal, it could propagate and multiply, imbuing other substances with its virtues. This process could counteract infirmity, pestilence, and famine, making it a powerful tool for medical and spiritual healing. In his commentary on the Secretum Secretorum, Bacon provided a recipe for the Philosopher's Stone, a legendary substance capable of transmuting base metals into gold and extending human life. The process began with human blood, which he believed contained the 4 simple humors: phlegm, bile, blood, and melancholy. These humors had to be separated, purified, and then recombined in a secret proportion with quicksilver, the calx of a base metal, and the calx of a noble metal. This elixir was not just for transmuting metals, but also for prolonging life and improving moral and mental health. Bacon saw the body and mind as interconnected, and an imbalance in one would affect the other. Thus, the elixir could heal both physical and character defects. Bacon's ideas on prolonging life were influenced by various sources, including the pseudo-Aristotelian Secretum Secretorum and the De Retardation Accidentium Senectutis. He believed that the natural span of human life was much longer than what was commonly experienced, and that this could be restored through secret remedies known only to a few adepts in natural philosophy and experimental science. One such remedy was the Gloria Ineffabilis, a compound medicine that combined 8 other medicines, each targeting specific parts of the body. This mixture, when fermented with honey and exposed to stellar rays, was said to strengthen the mind, morals, and body, potentially extending life to its natural limits. Bacon also advocated for the use of other special medical preparations, such as rhubarb, precious stones, gold, and silver, which needed to be treated alchemically to remove their harmful components. These medicines, he argued, could be discovered and refined using experimental science, a field he championed as a means to uncover the secrets of nature. Practical alchemy, as opposed to speculative alchemy, focused on using processes like distillation, fermentation, and congelation to make medicines safer and more effective. For example, quicksilver, which was dangerous in its raw form, could be prepared alchemically to have powerful beneficial effects on the human body. Similarly, the poisonous flesh of vipers, a common ingredient in theriac preparations, could be rendered harmless through alchemical processes. These methods were in line with the interests of surgeons of the time, who were increasingly using distilled medicines. Bacon's ideas on prolongevity and alchemy were widely influential in England, where his writings were magnified and followed with great enthusiasm. The De Retardation Accidentium Senectutis, often attributed to Bacon, was particularly popular and was translated into Middle English. This and other texts on prolongevity were copied and collected by friars, who played a significant role in disseminating these ideas. The influence of Bacon and his followers can be seen in the many manuscripts and texts attributed to him in English libraries. In the mid-14th century, treatises on elixirs of life, and quintessential remedies written by friars from southern France and Catalonia began to spread in England. John of Rupecissa, a Franciscan tertiary, wrote the Book of Consideration of the Quintessence, which promised powerful remedies for the poor. These remedies were obtained through multiple distillations from wine and herbs, and were claimed to be far more potent than orthodox medicines. Another influential work was On the Secrets of Nature, De Secretis Nature, attributed to the pseudonymous Raymundus Lullius, which built on Rupecissa's ideas and was widely popular in England. The Tabula Medicine, compiled by Franciscans in England between 1416 and 1425, is a prime example of the influence of these quintessential remedies on medical practice. The compilers recommended the use of quintessence and ardent waters for various ailments, drawing on the works of Rupecissa and other alchemical texts. The use of distilled remedies, including human blood, was also prominent in the Tabula Medicine, reflecting Bacon's influence. Friars were often associated with alchemical practices, despite the strictures against such activities in mendicant constitution. Some were even accused of fraudulent alchemy, as in the case of a mendicant friar who defrauded a prior of the St. Albans cell at Binham. Despite these negative portrayals, the influence of friar alchemists persisted, as evidenced by the Dietarium de Sanitatis Custodia, written for Duke Humphrey of Gloucester in 1424. The physician Gilbert Keimer, who wrote this dietarium, combined Baconian and quintessential alchemical ideas to advise the Duke on prolonging his life. Keimer's text reflects the fusion of Bacon's alchemical medical approaches with the later pseudo-Lullian tradition, demonstrating the enduring impact of these ideas on medical and alchemical practices in 15th century England. Through these writings and practices, the legacy of Roger Bacon and his alchemical theories continued to shape the pursuit of health, longevity, and spiritual redemption for centuries. In the mid-15th century, a group of 12 men, including Gilbert Keimer, a royal physician, petitioned King Henry VI on May 31, 1456. The petition was a request to use alchemical methods to create powerful medicines from various ingredients. This was the first petition of its kind, focusing on alchemical medicines rather than turning base metals into gold. The king was suffering from a debilitating illness, and the petitioners hoped to find a cure. They described the medicine they sought as a mother and empress of medicines, also known as the philosopher's stone or the elixir of life. The petition was successful, and 3 of the petitioners, including Keimer, were granted permission to pursue this alchemical medicine. After this, no similar petitions were made to the crown for medicinal alchemy. However, the interest in alchemical texts continued among university, educated men, and medical practitioners. Prominent figures like Roger Marchal, John Argentine, and John Cockes in Oxford and Cambridge were particularly interested in the practical applications of alchemical remedies rather than the creation of elixirs. John Argentine, who treated the sons of Edward IV and Prince Arthur, the eldest son of Henry VII, used alchemical remedies in his practice. His handbook, which has survived, shows that he applied these remedies to his royal patients, suggesting that the royal family was open to experimental treatment. Roger Bacon, a 13th century friar, had previously criticized the overemphasis on logic and controversy in medical practice, advocating instead for what he called scientia experimentalis, or experimental knowledge. This involved testing and observing methods, sometimes using instruments, to create and manufacture medicines and tools. Bacon's ideas inspired English friars to value and document such experiments. For example, Nicholas de Batel, a friar from the 13th century, compiled a manuscript containing various experiments, including remedies for vision problems, scrofula, and pleurisy. The Tabula Medicine, a comprehensive guide to therapeutics, was highly respected by the friars. It emphasized the importance of proven remedies, often based on the experiences of practitioners. The text included remedies from prestigious scholars as well as from common folk, whose expertise was valued for its practical effectiveness. The friars were particularly interested in remedies that had been tested and found to be effective, often noted with the phrase probatum iesti, this has been tested. The Tabula Medicine drew from earlier works, such as Avicenna's Canon and the Summa of Roger de Baron, but it prioritized practical efficacy over theoretical explanations. The The text was a compilation of remedies based on written authorities and proven experiments, reflecting a pragmatic approach to medicine that was more practical than theoretical. English friars, including Franciscans and Dominicans, were also interested in natural magic, charms, and amulets. Despite the broader church's efforts to suppress magical practices, these friars often used charms and incantations in their healing methods. John Bryle, a Franciscan friar from Canterbury, compiled a manuscript in the early 15th century that included various magical experiments, charms, and alchemical recipes. Bryle's manuscript reflected his fascination with natural magic, which he saw as a way to explore the secrets of nature through experimentation. The York Austin Friars Library contained a significant collection of magical texts, including works on necromancy and image magic. This collection suggests that some friars were deeply interested in exploring the boundaries of natural and demonic magic, even though such practices were often considered dangerous and heretical. One notable case involving a friar and magic was that of John Randolph, a Franciscan who was the confessor to the Dowager Queen Joan of Navarre. In 1419, he was accused of attempting to harm King Henry V through sorcery and necromancy. Although the charges may have been politically motivated, Randolph's interest in astrology likely contributed to the accusations. He was eventually imprisoned in the Tower of London and later murdered in 1429, highlighting the risks associated with engaging in magical practices in the royal court. The friars' interest in experimental medicine and natural magic reflects a broader trend in medieval England where practical, experience-based knowledge was highly valued. This approach to medicine and magic was a blend of scholarly and folk traditions, emphasizing the importance of proven methods and the exploration of nature's secrets. In the 12th century, the Church faced a significant challenge, accurately calculating the date of Easter and other movable feasts. This required understanding and coordinating the solar and lunar cycles, which meant that astronomical tables had to be regularly updated. In England, this task was taken up by scholars like Roger of Hereford, who in 1176 wrote a treatise on computus, the science of calculating dates, and adapted the Tolden tables to the Hereford meridian in 1178. These tables were crucial for determining the phases of the moon and the position of the sun, which were essential for setting the date of Easter. One of the most influential figures in this field was Robert Grosseteste, who worked at the episcopal seat of Hereford from 1194 to 1198, and later became a prominent scholar. In the 1220s, Grosseteste wrote his own treatise on computus, known as the Computus Correctorius. This work was groundbreaking because it harshly criticized the flaws in the Julian calendar and the 19-year Metonic lunar cycle. Grosseteste used advanced mathematical tools like sexagesimal fractions and Hindu-Arabic numerals, which were not commonly used in computus at the time. His work exposed how the ecclesiastical calendar was often an abstraction of astronomical reality, and it became highly influential among scholars. Grosseteste's approach was adopted by other English scholars, including the Franciscans and the Dominican Robert Halcott, who continued his work in the later 13th century. The Franciscans, in particular, showed a strong interest in astronomy and astrology. They collected and studied astrological texts and produced their own works, which were often used for practical purposes like medical treatments and predicting the weather. One of the most notable figures in this tradition was Roger Bacon, a Franciscan friar who lived in the 13th century. Bacon was deeply concerned with the accuracy of the ecclesiastical calendar and its implications for the Church. He calculated astronomical tables covering the years 1254 to 1329, using data from newly translated sources. Bacon believed that the Church's inability to determine the correct date of Easter and other major festivals was a source of embarrassment, especially when other faiths could accurately predict such events. In 1267, Bacon wrote his Opus Maius and presented it to Pope Clement IV. In this work, he argued that the ecclesiastical calendar was unreliable, and that it failed to accurately predict lunar phases. Bacon also delved into the broader implications of this inaccuracy, suggesting that if the calendar could not correctly predict events in the present, it was unlikely to provide reliable predictions for the 1st century AD. He relied on the work of Ptolemy and Abu Mashar, using their methods to argue for a more accurate chronology of world events. Bacon also explored the role of astrology in understanding human affairs. He believed that the positions of the planets and stars influenced human dispositions and could be used to make general predictions about behavior. However, he was careful to avoid the deterministic view that these predictions were immutable. Instead, he argued that the heavens acted on human complexions, allowing for general predictions while still acknowledging the role of individual will and divine intervention. In the Opus Maius, Bacon provided practical guidance on how to use astrology, including how to construct horoscopes and predict significant events. He discussed the qualities of the planets, such as Saturn being cold and dry, and how these qualities affected human life. Bacon's work on astrology was influential, and it was referenced by later scholars like John Ashendon, who wrote a Summa Astrologiae Judicialis de Accidentibus Mundi in 1347. The Franciscans continued to be active in the field of astronomy and astrology. Friars like Simon Tunstall and Reginald Lambourne made significant contributions to the science of the stars. Friar Stephen, for example, made detailed observations of the sun using quadrants and annotated an astronomical manuscript, demonstrating the practical application of these sciences outside the university setting. The Dominican order also had its share of notable figures in this field. Giles of Orvieto, a Dominican friar, wrote a manuscript filled with tables and information on the effects of the zodiac and planets on human fortunes. Other Dominican scholars, like Robert of York, wrote treatises on astrological weather prediction and the theory of the mixture of elements. Thomas of Windle, a Franciscan, copied and expanded on the astronomical and astrological works of his predecessors. In 1424, he produced a manuscript containing Alphonsine canons and tables, as well as his own tables of radices for several cities, which required extensive computation. His work demonstrated the ongoing interest in and practical application of astronomical and astrological knowledge within the religious orders. These scholars and their works show that the study of astronomy and astrology was deeply intertwined with the religious and intellectual life of medieval England. Their efforts to improve the accuracy of the calendar and understand the influence of the heavens on human affairs reflected a broader commitment to scientific inquiry and the pursuit of knowledge. The influence of mendicant friars on medieval astrology and calendars is a fascinating chapter in the history of medicine and science. From the early Middle Ages, ecclesiastical calendars included a variety of medical information, such as unlucky days, lunar prognostications, and dietary advice. However, a significant shift occurred in the 14th century with the creation of new, more detailed calendars that placed medical and astrological information at their core. Two prominent friars, John Summer of the Franciscan order and Nicholas of Lynn of the Carmelite order, played crucial roles in this transformation. John Summer, from Bridgewater in Somerset, wrote his calendarium in 1380 for Joan of Kent, the mother of King Richard II. This work, commissioned by Thomas Kingsbury, the provincial of the English Franciscans, was designed to assist in medical prognosis and the timely administration of treatments. Similarly, Nicholas of Lynn wrote a calendar in 1386 for John of Gaunt, which included detailed astronomical tables and medical advice. These new calendars were not just collections of dates and events, they were sophisticated tools for medical practice. They included tables for predicting lunar and solar eclipses, the moon's position in the zodiac, and the reigning planet for each hour of the day. The moon was believed to have a significant influence on the human body, especially the blood, and these calendars helped practitioners determine the best times for bloodletting, surgery, and administering medicines. One of the most striking features of these calendars was the inclusion of zodiac man illustrations, which showed how different zodiac signs influenced various parts of the body. These calendars also often contained additional texts on bloodletting, uroscopy, and even paper instruments like volvels for simple astrological calculations. The Nicholas of Lynn calendar, in particular, was highly valued, with some manuscripts containing only the canons on bloodletting and laxatives, suggesting their practical importance. The influence of these calendars extended beyond their initial creation. A preliminary working copy of the Nicholas of Lynn calendar, written around 1386, survives in a manuscript at Chapel Hill, North Carolina. This manuscript, which later belonged to the Dominican house at Thetford, contains various astronomical notes and corrections, indicating ongoing interest and use by the friars. The calendar's contents were also adapted for use in other mendicant houses, such as the Augustinian Friars of York and the Franciscans of Coventry. The portability and practicality of these calendars were further enhanced by their production in folded form. These folded calendars, made by stitching together leaves of parchment, were compact and easy to carry, making them ideal for itinerant friars. They often included illustrations like zodiac men and urine wheels, emphasizing their medical and astrological functions. Beyond the calendars, there is evidence of individual friars practicing astrology. Michael Donnet, a Franciscan at the Hartlepool convent, began studying astrology in 1400 and was casting horoscopes by 1411. He recorded the nativities of his nephews and nieces, demonstrating the personal and practical use of astrology among the friars. Ralph Hobie, another Franciscan, wrote a treatise on astrological medicine in 1437, emphasizing the importance of celestial bodies in medical practice. His work, while incomplete, provides a detailed guide to using astrology for medical prognosis and treatment, citing authorities like Roger Bacon and Robert Grosseteste. The interest of friars in women's medicine is another intriguing aspect. Despite their vows of chastity, friars like William Home and Geoffrey Laund were known for their expertise in gynecological and obstetric care. William Home, in particular, compiled extensive texts on medicinal simples for treating womb complaints, while Geoffrey Laund provided remedies for menstrual problems and treated prominent patients like Sir John Tressel. These friars and their works demonstrate the complex and multifaceted role of mendicants in medieval society. They were not just religious figures, but also scholars, practitioners, and innovators in the fields of medicine and astrology. Their contributions to these calendars and medical texts reflect a deep engagement with the practical and scientific aspects of their time, bridging the gap between religious devotion and secular knowledge.